gotten to know a little bit about Tony Marinaro, the man, and obviously we know his capability as a sports talker or sportsman and commentary and analyst.
You haven't talked about my looks yet, by the way. Let's be brutally honest, right? You talked to me about my talent on radio, okay? I don't know if you've had a chance to see the staff at TSN 690. I am without a doubt the best-looking guy there, okay? I got the hair. I got the eyes. I'm cool. I'm hip. I'm the guy that everyone wants to hang out with, right? So if you ever want to throw that into the interview at any point, go ahead. As a matter of fact, at least you've been looking at me eye to eye. This guy hasn't been looking at me at all. He's always had his head down. Questo Chapaura se innamora di me. Don't worry about it. That's my barber, brother. Can we zoom in? That's Mario the barber. He's my barber. When we talked about my hair, that's Mario the barber. Quello è Mario Barbiere. His barber shop is right around the corner over here. Yeah. Well, you appreciate it. I'm hoping it's going to get me a haircut for free every now and then. I really appreciate it. He charges me $20 for a haircut. He tells me he appreciates it. I'm giving him plugs. He's right there. He's on Lefebvre Street at the corner of Thierry. He really is good at what he does, though. I have to tell you that. Yeah.
When it comes to soccer, Jose Mourinho, your favorite coach of all time? Why?
Because he wins everywhere he goes, for the most part. And I know he didn't win a Champions League with Real Madrid, but he won the league because he's confident, because he's outspoken, because he's not afraid to say it the way it is. He doesn't care if he gets fined. He doesn't care if he gets suspended. But for the most part, he's a player's coach. And there are players that will say he gave me the playing time, and some they'll say he didn't give me the playing time. But even the ones that probably didn't get the playing time, you'll be hard pressed to find the guy that won't say that Jose Mourinho was the best prepared coach that they ever had. And you know what? He'll go to bat for his players. He'll defend his players, and he knows when they're wrong. But I just find he's interesting in his interviews. His results are obvious. They're great. And I just find he's the most charismatic personality out there.
Okay. And so, Jose Mourinho, Sir Alex Ferguson, can the two be compared? I'm asking you this question because I love soccer. It's my number one sport, over and above hockey. But sometimes I find it hard to justify Jose Mourinho to being as good a coach as everybody makes him out to be. My reason is very simple. I think he's just a little bit too outspoken for maybe my own opinion, my own taste. But if I took it, I like Sir Alex Ferguson. I like Sir Alex Ferguson in the way he structured his team and the way he controlled his team. Is that a fair statement to say about Sir Alex Ferguson? And would it be a fair comparison towards Jose Mourinho?
Well, you know what? The comparisons game is an unfortunate one, right? I was having this conversation with a buddy of mine yesterday, right? Because the one thing people love to do in soccer is compare Lionel Messi to Cristiano Ronaldo, okay? Now, they both play different positions. Lionel Messi is an all-and-out forward, and he plays within an area of, let's just say 50 to 75 meters, where that's where he is. He sticks around, he gets the ball there, and he can either set up a teammate or finish. Cristiano Ronaldo's a winger. He's got offensive responsibilities. He's got defensive responsibilities. He's taller. He's faster. Messi's probably quicker. Ronaldo's probably faster. And they're very different players. And they both have different qualities. And they both play different positions. It's not fair to compare them, but we do. We compare Sir Alex Ferguson with Jose Mourinho. They're different coaches. They're different people. What Sir Alex was able to do, being the manager of Man United as long as he was, when coaches nowadays in this era in any sport have a shelf life of, let's say 2 to 3 years, 2 to 4.
Right.
It's remarkable.
Right.
Really it is. But the fact that Jose Mourinho can go to any team, to any league, take a team from scratch, build it his way, I think those are obvious qualities as well. So by saying, I think Mourinho is the best doesn't take anything away from Sir Alex. He's also a great manager, or was a great manager in his own respect, but in his own right, but just different, I guess.
So, Tony, I want to touch a little bit on the story about TSN 690 being acquired by Bell. I believe Bell acquired just more than one radio station. They actually acquired, I believe, 4 English radio stations, Shome being one of them, CJAD, Virgin Radio. And so I guess the issue with having more than 3 English radio-speaking shows was that Bell had to decide and cut out on one of them. And unfortunately, I believe they, TSN 690 being one, that's the one that they chose to cut out because of the condition that the CRTC put on them. So can you elaborate a bit on what happened on that?
Well, happily, it's something from the past, but long story short, TSN 690 has been a part of the Bell Media family for a while. And Bell, being already a huge telecommunications company, wanted to become even bigger, and they set out to acquire Astral. Astral, in the radio side, already owned Shome FM, like you said, CJAD, and Virgin Radio. And so when this sale was taking place, the Bell Media family was going to end up having 4 English radio stations. And the CRTC rule was you were only allowed 3 at the time. So seeing as TSN 690 was the least profitable and least prominent, it looked like we were on the outside looking in. But long story short, thankfully at the time there was an objection from the CRTC who said, no, we're getting too much support from TSN 690's loyal listeners. They're going to stick around. At that point, a little while later, Bell went back and said, okay, we'd still like to acquire Astral. And at this point, you know what, we are going to keep TSN 690. And
they actually made an exception.
Yeah, we'd like to ask for an exemption. And we promise to fulfill this and this and that and whatever. And one of the things is that we will keep TSN 690 around for at least 7 years in the same format that it is. We'll give back some money for sports programs, amateur sports programs here in the province. So those conditions were met and were granted. And so now we're one big happy family. And as a matter of fact, so at some point this week, we're going to be moving into the building with all the other radio stations on
RDS
René Lévesque and corner of Papineau.
Right. So
across the street from RDS, actually.
I see.
Yeah.
So tell me, I mean, obviously, with that concern in your mind, did it ever dawn on you that, maybe eventually they would have probably cut out TSN 690 to ever go to a, let's say, French radio or maybe move to Ontario and pursue your radio career there?
All right. So I'm not moving to Ontario. If I ever leave, I'm leaving. I'm going to Europe, and we're going to pursue other dreams. But the opportunity's been there. If I wanted to go to Ontario, I would imagine I could have made my way. And no, family's here, friends are here, everything's here. I'm staying in Montreal, so that was never going to happen. Would I be willing to have moved to French radio if I had to? Yeah, I mean, I don't know if my French would have been good enough. I mean, I think it's okay, but it's obviously not perfect. But I mean, it's definitely something I would have considered. But it was a very stressful time. Don't get me wrong. It was a very, very difficult year, just over a year. We didn't know what was going to happen with our radio station. We didn't know what was going to happen with our jobs. But to be very honest with you, had this happened about 8 or 9 years ago, it would have been a lot more difficult for me because, I mean, at that point I would have said, oh, man, where am I going to end up next? At this point, even if I wasn't going to end up in sports radio, which is where I want to be, I mean, I've built up a pretty good name for myself, and when we were going through tough times, I mean, there's a few people that reached out to me and said, hey, our company could really use somebody like you. So I wasn't quite going to be in that field, but at least there was peace of mind knowing that, you know what, I was still going to be able to put food on the table for my wife and my kids, because there were a couple of offers that came in that were really, really good offers, as a matter of fact. But hopefully all's well that ends well, and
absolutely.
So everything worked.
It worked out for the better. Yeah.
How competitive is it in your business? I mean, without stating the obvious, there are other. You are who would you be considered? A DJ, an analyst, a commentary.
Sports radio host.
Yeah.
Look, extremely competitive.
A good-looking one at that too.
Well, you're stating the obvious, but yes. But look, here's the deal, okay? It's no different than a salesman. If he doesn't sell and his numbers aren't up, there's a fear of losing your job, right? If people aren't listening, the ratings aren't great, whatever, every show's got to be different. You have to find a way. There are days, let's be honest, where there's nothing going on in hockey. I mean, I went through 2 NHL lockouts. It was like pulling teeth. It wasn't easy. But you have to try and come up with stuff.
Right.
You have to try and keep people interested. You have to try and find an angle. You have to try and find the story. One of the things I try and do is I try and make my personality come out as much as I can. I think people, you know what, I've entered people's homes, I've entered their cars, and you know what, I try and be funny. I try and talk about my life at some point, family life, because you know what, everybody out there has a family. They have kids, they're listening and stuff. So I try and make them relate to me as much as I can. And you try and, so to answer your question, long story short, extremely competitive. For me anyway. I can't speak for the others. But I want to be the best. I don't want to be the second best sports radio host. I don't want to be the third best. I want to be the best. Am I the best? It's debatable. It depends on who you ask. But, for me, extremely competitive.
In the course of a day, in the game of sports is one thing. As a radio host, you're surrounded by producers, executive producers, etc. You have as well other radio hosts that are in there, and you probably exchange ideas, opinions, and whatnot. But I got to ask you, most shows, behind the scenes, always funny things happen that nobody knows about. Most shows, they call them bloopers on TV, and so they accumulate so much of it, and then one day there's a special on it. Any such thing that takes place with you guys in terms of bloopers?
Well, in terms of bloopers, I mean, you do encounter some technical issues at the time where you got to play a clip and it just jams, and so
Right.
you're stalling now. You're saying stuff, waiting for that whole thing, that whole clip to roll. But I mean, when there's technical issues, it's not fun because you need the email to work to read out emails. You need the internet to work so you can get to your
Twitter account
your
and-
Twitter account and some of the tweets that are coming in and stuff like that. But I mean, that's part for the course. That happens everywhere. But there have been some funny moments on the show. Some really, really funny moments. I remember this one time. I was working with Ron Francis, who of course used to work at the CTV.
CTV, yep.
And so he's Rod Francis's dad. So I'm working with Ron Francis, and the guy was a funny guy. Sometimes he would do things that were so funny without even knowing. He was great at doing sports updates. And when he would do his sports updates, he would also give you traffic, he'd give you weather. So he's got one TV on sports, and he's got the other TV on Meteo Media. And I remember it was a cold winter day. I think it was like 21 below, right? It was freezing outside. And there we were working the morning show together. And just as he's doing his sports update, he goes, okay, and now on to weather. Meteo Media goes to commercial.
No.
So he announced the weather is, he gets to the weather, he goes, and now the weather in Montreal. Looks up to the monitor, they're on commercial. He goes, it's 0 in Westmount. It's 0. It was like 21 below. That was a pretty good moment.
I guess, right?
Sometimes people call in and they say crazy things, and like they would make a crazy trade, and it's just sometimes, a crazy caller, or
How do you handle that?
it's pretty funny. It's part of the show. People have a laugh at it, and they call in, they email, everybody comments. It's the show has. I'm happy to say it's become one big happy family. Loyal listeners. They've been with me, since day one and stuff like that. And I've come into their homes, and so we. It's like we know a lot about each other. There's actually, so I've had a chance to meet a lot of them at different functions and stuff like that. They are real, without the help of the listeners.
the show is really
This whole thing, first off,
mute.
we probably, this whole thing with the CRTC probably would not have been overturned. And at the end of the day, if they're not listening, I mean, I don't have a job.
Right.
So, you know what, I appreciate their support, and it's been awesome. It's been really, really awesome.
If we can get down to a little bit more of what you really do, and that is talk about hockey.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. Daniel Briere, what does he bring to the table?
He brings...
Do you like the trade to begin with? Or
Well,
The acquisition. Yeah.
You know what? I didn't think it was going to happen, right? Because you take a look at the team, and on the surface, they're already small. I mean, let's face it. Jonta, Gallagher, whether he plays big or not, I mean, that's another story.
Right.
At the end of the day, he's still small, right? Thomas Plaquenitz is not a big guy. David Desharnais is not a big guy. So they're a small team, and you would have thought, you know what? He's probably not the right fit. But at the same time, it's very difficult to bring homegrown talent to play for the Montreal Canadiens. If you're not drafting it, it's difficult to go out and acquire it. There was a guy that was available. They would have come under a lot of scrutiny, had they passed up on the opportunity. I'm not saying they just got him because of that reason. I think he's an upgrade on Michael Ryder. Michael Ryder's gone. Michael Ryder could score goals, there's no doubt about it. But Daniel Briere, I think, is going to be a Montreal Canadian with a lot more pride than Michael Ryder was. I think he plays with more creativity. I think he plays with more imagination. I think he's a smarter hockey player. So in that respect, and at the same time, you know what? The Montreal Canadiens are trying to get bigger. Yes, they added Daniel Briere, but they also added George Parros. They also added Douglas Murray. Emelin will be back by January. That'll give them a shot in the arm as well. Brian Jonta is in his final year of his contract. I don't see him pursuing his career with the Montreal Canadiens after that. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the other smaller players that we talked about is traded at some point this season. So the Canadiens, there's no doubt in my mind, will be, by the time the playoffs come around next year, should they make it, because I mean it's not a foregone conclusion that they're going to make it. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be a grind.
Right. I was because it has no bearing that they finished in second place last year.
But
they're
look,
going to make it this year.
I expect the Montreal Canadiens to make it. I don't expect them to win the division. I don't expect them to finish second in the conference, but I do expect them to be a better team once the playoffs come around.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be very tough for the Montreal Canadiens, one way or the other. How much more difficult is it for Bergevin moving forward to achieve or attain a goal-by-goal step, or is it something that he's got to really just push as fast as possible to get to the main goal?
No, he's not going to push as fast as possible, because if you take a look at all the people that he hired in and around him, and the emphasis they've put on scouting, and the Montreal Canadiens did something different this year than they have done in previous years, and that it was in previous years they always said their motto was going to be, let's draft the best player available. The Canadiens didn't do that this year. The Canadiens' motto changed this year, and they said, okay, now we're drafting by need, because every year they keep on saying we're going to draft the best player available, and in the end the best player available to them was never the bigger, stronger guy. It was always the smaller, more skilled guy. And then they found themselves with too many of those guys. They weren't able to acquire, when a team has a Milan Lucic, they're not going to trade him to you. It's not going to happen. So when they have a power forward, they want to keep that power forward. So Canadians realizing they couldn't acquire the power forward via trade, they couldn't acquire the power forward via free agency. At this point, we've got to start drafting them. So they started to draft for size. Rome wasn't built in a day. These guys aren't going to be ready overnight. A guy like Mike McCarron's not going to be ready with next year. It'll probably take him a couple of years. The Canadiens will be a really, really good team a couple of years from now. Right now, what they're doing is it's a project. It's building. I know they had a great regular season, but I expect that, I can't guarantee a Stanley Cup, but I think the Montreal Canadiens will become a legitimate Stanley Cup contender within 2 years.
Tell me, Tony, question. You mentioned George Parros earlier. Do you think George Parros acquiring him was sort of to replace the role that Brandon Proust has to play?
Well, there's no doubt that Proust last year, he was sticking up for his teammates, great team guy, but you wanted him on the ice, and you didn't want him in the box. And Travis Moen was the guy that was supposed to be there to support Brandon Proust, and he didn't do it at all.
Right.
I thought he had a shameful season. I'm embarrassed for the fact that he wasn't willing to compete in his first year of a 4-year deal. If there's one knock on Bergevin, he'd love to take a mulligan on that contract. There's no doubt in my mind. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to trade Travis Moen going forward. Is he going to find the taker? I mean, that's another story for another day.
Right.
Having said that, look, you have nothing to lose with going after or acquiring George Parros the way they did. He's a big guy. Whether he's going to win his fights or he's not going to win his fights, he solidifies a need.
Right.
He's got a role. He's going to play it, and he'll be in the penalty box, and Brandon Proust won't. So that's going to make the Montreal Canadiens a better team right off the bat.
Right.
Last year was a 48-game season. Does it justify where the Habs finished? Does it justify the Norris Trophy winner, P.K. Subban? I bring this up because Montreal over the years has shown, and they showed it as well last year towards the end of the season, they started to have trouble. They started to fiddle out. And it showed in the playoffs as well. They just were not the same team of the first 30 games that was being played. So was last year 48-game season indicative of anything that we're going to see better of Montreal, or was that just something that said we have to put that aside?
Most people will say that if the Canadiens would have played 82 games, they wouldn't have finished first in the division. They wouldn't have finished second in the conference because, they're small and this and that and whatever. The fact of the matter is we don't have the answer to that question. Because, yes, even though it's a shorter season, the season was also condensed.
Correct.
So by playing a condensed season, it's not going to help the smaller bodies either. So you know what? We don't have the answer to that question. We don't know if PK Subban would have won the Norris with an 82-game season. We don't know if the Canadiens would have won the division. We don't know if the Canadiens would have finished second in the conference. We don't know. And that's the beauty of this upcoming season, that a lot of questions are going to be answered.
Question mark on Michel Therrien?
I don't think there's a question mark. I think he's a lot more comfortable now than he was the first time around. But in the end, and I think he did a lot with what he had. I think he achieved a lot. I liked his composure. I liked some of the things he tried to do with team spirit. I liked a lot of things. Unfortunately for Michel, let's be brutally honest here. The way Carey Price was outgoaled by Anderson, the way Turris outplayed Plekanec, the way the Senators outplayed the Canadiens, Paul McLean outcoached Michel Therrien.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? I mean, there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
Absolutely.
And Therrien, you can tell, got into the war of words during the press conferences, and there's a lot of buttons that he tried to press, and it didn't work out.
Right.
So, but, I still think the Montreal Canadiens have a good coach. And he's the kind of guy that wears on you over time, but he's changed, though. He's changed. He's a better coach now, once again, than he was. He's got a lot more experience, and I don't think coaching is a problem for the Montreal Canadiens. Not yet, anyway. I mean, eventually he'll do his time, and, we've talked about a coach having a shelf life, right? And he'll do his shelf life, but I don't think we're at that point right now. I mean, I don't think there'll be a problem with coaching at any point this season.
If I just switch it up a little bit, because we can go on when we speak about the Habs for the longest of times.
Don't go too long. I'm getting hungry. We're here at American Johnny. You're talking to me, right? I have this sign,
Actually,
right?
Guy's eating no panino over there. I'm getting hungry.
This guy over here, he's eating a panini, and he's eating it so fast, it looks like he's going to the electric chair in 10 minutes. I see the sign over here: funghi, porcini, champignon, porcini, codolette di porco, $3.29 a pound, entrecote, Angus, poulet barbecue. And this guy's getting into the Canadians, the defense, the forwards, the goalie, the coach, the trainer, the season tickets.
Make it fast.
What's your next question? The left wing lock? Can we eat already or what? What's the story?
What direction is the NHL taking? And in your view, is Bettman taking the NHL in the right direction?
Look, he's making money for the owners, and that's the reason why he's making over $8 million in salary. I don't like the direction of the National Hockey League personally. There are things that I would do with this league that clearly the commissioner doesn't see it the same way, and that's fine. He's making money for the owners, and that's the bottom line, right? So he's on the right track. Having said that, I think less is more. I think 30 teams or 28 teams
Absolutely.
is way too much. He's looking into expanding it to even maybe even a couple of more teams down the line, maybe even adding another 2 teams. I think there are too many players in this league. I think there are too many teams in this league. When we were growing up, right, we would know pretty much the roster of every single team in the league.
That's right.
We'd know every player. We'd know their jersey number. Now, even if you're a follower, you're still not going to know the third and fourth line players of some teams in the National Hockey League, maybe even of most teams in the National Hockey League. So I find... I take a look at some of the fourth-line players in the league. With all due respect to them, I mean, it's great. They have a job. The National Hockey League Players Association would never vote for less teams because they want to give as many jobs to as many players, of course. But at the same time, I mean, there's guys that can't play in this league. I mean, you see 2 or 3 players every night that if this is going to be the coolest game on earth, if this is going to be the best hockey league in the world, they can't play with the others. I want to see the best players playing more, and I want to see less teams. For me, I've always wanted a 24-team league. It'll never come to that, but I think, 4 groups of 6, that would be great. And one of the things I like is that take a page out of soccer where you have Champions Leagues. You run a little tournament. You take a couple of your teams. They end up being in a tournament with teams in Switzerland, with teams in Russia, with teams in Finland, with teams in Sweden, and with teams in the Czech Republic. Look, I know the scheduling. You're going to have to take some time off.
Yeah,
There's going to be
the
travel
NHL
issues.
doesn't allow for that type of schedule
all
right
that
now.
Stuff. I understand all that, but you know what? Globally, it would be awesome for the game. So I'd love to see less teams, less players, and a sort of Champions League in hockey.
Yeah,
if I can, 3 points for a win. I'm sick and tired of seeing two teams tied at 1 or tied at 2 or tied at 3, and in the final 5 minutes of the game, they shut it down because they want to get that point going into overtime. And then once they're in overtime and it's 4-on-4, they still have defensive defensemen on the ice because they think they have the better goalie who win in the shootout. I don't want to see it anymore. Soccer years ago adopted a 3-point system for a win. And take a look at scoring. In Italian soccer, it's gone up. some of the games are, Genoa, Fiorentina, they play games. You'll see a 5-2 scoreline. You'll see a 4-3 scoreline. Napoli plays. You'll see them score 3-4 goals a game. It's a lot more exciting. 3 points for a win. Champions League, less teams, less players. That's it.
Very quickly before we finish, Serie A, who wins? Champion.
Serie A, who wins? Juventus. Still the cream of the crop in Italy, Serie A. The most complete team. Napoli should be there. I love watching Napoli. I love watching Fiorentina. In my opinion, the two most exciting teams in Italy. They play the most exciting brand, most open brand of soccer, Napoli and Fiorentina. But the best team top to bottom remains Juventus. They'll win the Italian championship. Tough because, I'd love to say Jose Mourinho, but he usually wins championships in his second year with a team. I'm going to say Manchester City.
La Liga,
Barcelona.
Bundesliga.
Bayern Munich.
European champions this year moving forward.
European champions this year moving forward. That's a tough question, but let's go with Real Madrid.
Golden Ball.
Messi.
Tony, for me, it's
Tony,
been a pleasure.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Folks, it's been a pleasure. Please.
When do I get paid exactly? And are we doing this St. Leonard style? I mean, are you going to take the money out of your sock? How's this going to work exactly?
We're going to give you a boost.
All right.
Folks, please log on to YouTube. Look for us, WOPTalk. Subscribe. We'd love you to subscribe. Till the next time, any comments, good or bad, info@woptalk.tv. Thank you. Till next time.